Welcome back, fellow readers. This is Suave, and today we're going to be taking a look at a light novel series known as Reincarnated as the Last of My Kind, Volume 1. This is written by Kiri Komori, illustrated by Yamigo, translated by Lempert, and published by Cross Infinite World. So, what exactly is this book all about? And the title kind of already gives us a big hint. So, we have a woman, she's in her late 20s, and she gets involved in a freak accident, passes away very quickly, and she finds herself being reincarnated into the body of a baby girl. And this baby girl is living inside a big fantasy world. You know, you have swords, magic, all that good stuff. And her only memory that she has as a baby is she sees what she believes is her mother and her father, and they're putting her inside this crib-like structure. It's like this little circular dome structure, and she is immediately pushed off into the river, and there she goes, and she kind of sees maybe some fires, destruction in where her parents were at. So long story short, she finds herself being adopted by this knight named Marcus. Now Marcus, he kind of has his own baggage going on, but you'll find out when you read through it. He's a retired knight because he suffered sort of a crippling injury during his wars, during the campaigns. This is a very tense world right now. I believe the makeup is 50% of the population is made up of humans, 40% is demi-humans. Demi-humans are sort of like humanoid people, but they're not humans. So they're like dwarves, elves, beastmen, etc. And 10% of the world is made up of mythical creatures. So Marcus has gone through a lot, and when he sees this little baby girl, he decides to adopt her because he sees this as sort of a gift from the gods, as a sort of a blessing after everything that he's been through. So he decides to bring back the little baby back to his family's inn, and they name her Tenaris, or Tina for short. Now Tina, she knows everything that's going on. She has the mind of a woman who's in her late 20s, and she's kind of still figuring out this world. She's trying to see whether or not she trusts this guy. So fast forward a little bit, Tina is 4 years old, and she's able to walk and talk and do all that stuff. And for some reason, she's not really able to find herself being attached to this family because, you know, she has the mind of an adult woman, and she's trying to pretend to play the part of this young girl who is being part of this family. And she finds it very difficult to really play that part and just act natural and act like a normal little girl. That is until one day her grandfather falls very ill. So Marcus sees the condition that his father is in, and he decides that he can't really make the trip. He needs to stay home and rest. So he's going to go to the big city, get the family doctor, and bring him over here so they can make the medicine and make him feel better. The problem is the inn is located all the way out in the boonies, and so it's going to take a few days for him to actually do all that. And there are some adventurers who are still staying at this inn, so they kind of take it upon themselves to look after the little girl and look after his father as well. And now Tina, she's kind of freaking out too because her dad's gone and her grandfather's ill. She's trying to figure out how to make this all right. And she notices that he actually had been taking medicine, and she didn't even know that her grandfather was taking this medicine, but this medicine is all gone, which is why he's feeling worse now. So Tina's doing all these chores, she's talking to these adventurers, and she's trying to figure out if any of them have any special abilities that can make him feel better. And they're like, well, we have this human mage, but she's not really good at being a mage, and the rest of us aren't really magic wielders, and none of us really know alchemy, so there's nothing we can really do for him. And she's like, wait, what's alchemy? I've never heard of that before. Now, alchemy plays a very special role in this world because we know that all these people have mana, but it's a matter of how much mana you have and what do you use that mana for. So if you're a human, you barely have any mana capacity to begin with. If you're a demi-human, you probably have a lot of mana and you know how to use all these other different abilities. So alchemy was mostly discovered as a human thing because humans don't really have that much mana to work with. So alchemy kind of works around that. You just take a few ingredients, sprinkle a little bit of mana, and all of a sudden you can use these offensive abilities, you can make potions, you can make metals, you can do all sorts of things with alchemy. So now Tina is intrigued because alchemy is now an option, but she thinks it's a very complicated scientific option, and she was mostly looking forward to maybe learning magic when she grows up. And now she's thinking, okay, maybe I can learn alchemy, but how exactly does it work? So she eventually finds out that her dad actually has an alchemy book in his den. So she opens it up and she starts reading through it because she wants to see if she can try to do this before her dad comes back home. And what she finds out is that alchemy isn't really as bad as it sounds. You gotta remember, this is a grown woman, she knows how to read everything, so all these adventurers are kind of looking at her like, are you for real? You really want to do this? This 4-year-old girl is gonna really try to do alchemy right now? So she gathers up all her materials, and after a little bit of trial and error, she's able to craft this health potion. and she's like, oh my god, I actually did alchemy. But what these adventurers are staring at her, because it's not so much that she did alchemy, it's that she produced an item that's of the highest quality. So the way alchemy works in this world is that you can create anything, but there's different levels of quality that you can create these items in. It can be the most supreme quality, it can be good quality, it can be trash quality, and it all depends upon your process and really your mana. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail about how mana works in this world. Just know that the mana that people use has sort of become a little bit impure over the years. And so in order to make a product of the quality that Tina just made, it really has to take a very skilled alchemist. They have to have a very complicated setup, and they have to have just the right quality ingredients. Whereas Tina just kind of did it on a whim. Now, Tina is someone who is very motivated on wanting to be able to give back to the people who raised her. And in her previous life, she was kind of robbed of that very early on, because her mother was probably in her retiring age and she was in her late 20s. And so when she died, her biggest worry is that her mother probably lived on, died alone, and no one was there to support her. And so now she wants to make things right in this world and make the best of it and be able to provide to this family who adopted her and cared for her throughout her whole life. And the book is laid out in a really fun way. You have the chapters where you alternate between Tina's focus and Marcus's focus, so you get to see both of their perspectives. Although, don't get me wrong, this story is mostly about Tina. I'd say it's about 75% Tina and 25% Marcus. And so with each chapter, Tina's getting a little bit older, and she's also learning new recipes along the way. And that's what this story really focuses on, is the alchemy. You learn about the ingredients that are involved, the quality of the ingredients, how you have to prepare them, and what the end result is and how she uses them. Most of the time, the alchemy is directly used to either benefit the end or it's to really solve a problem that's happening at the end at the moment. And this story has a really fun economic side to it as well. So remember how we were talking about there was Marcus being involved in wars? Well, these countries, there's certain countries that really don't like each other and they're at war, and it's probably for personal reasons or racial tension reasons. And as a result, some countries are not having access to certain resources, and it just so happens that Tina is actually able to craft some of these resources through alchemy. And so you get these merchants coming to the inn, and they like having to do business with Tina and Marcus because they know that Tina produces really good quality products through her alchemy, and they're actually able to provide really good prices. They're like, okay, if you're going to give me maybe 10 bulks of this, I'll pay you this much up front, and I'll sell what I can over there, and I'll bring back some of the stuff that you asked for. And so this opens up a whole new world for Tina because she's earning a whole lot of money. She's going to use this money to help around the inn. It's going to help out the infrastructure, or in some cases there might even be some rare items that are only available through other countries that they can bring in, and it'll be a nice treat to have at the inn so that they can provide unique services to their customers, which means word of mouth will come around and more adventurers will want to come back to this inn, which means more business for the family and the inn. Now, the setting is perfect for the type of story that this book is trying to tell because most of it happens at this inn. And as you know, at an inn, there are adventurers who come and go. Every chapter we're met with a whole new set of adventurers, and each set of adventurers brings their own little complicated story. You get to learn a little bit about them, and they also interact with Tina and Marcus. And Tina sort of learns a little bit more about this world, and sometimes she even learns a little bit more about alchemy whenever she meets these people. And these characters are just so good. I'm talking everybody. Tina, Marcus, the adventurers who come in this inn, the merchants who come to do business. They are all extremely memorable in their own way. Pretty much all these side characters get fleshed out just enough so that you really care about them, and they just leave a really good impression on you. Now let's talk about the pacing of this book. It's a little bit interesting because at the beginning you get Tina, she's 4 years old. She's doing her alchemy thing. You get to see how it fleshes out. You get a lot of details about the alchemy, and then you see the resolution and how it affects everybody. And then almost immediately you go off right into the next year. And you still get this alternating chapters with Marcus. He kind of fleshes out the previous year a little bit more, but it kind of leaves a little bit more to be desired. So I was doing research to see if the pacing might improve and see how long this series would go. And what I found out was that this is actually a web novel in Japan that was never published as a formal light novel. And you kind of get that sense when you read the afterword of the book, because the author was actually kind of surprised that Cross Infinite World reached up to them and they said they wanted to translate his work and actually do a formal light novel here in English. The author refers to the story as their baby, so I can only imagine that this story is probably one of their very earlier works, if not maybe one of their first works that they ever did. So having all that info on hand, I can just assume that maybe this story was really meant to just be a short story. This wasn't meant to be a very long, epic, maybe 10 plus volume from the very beginning. This was meant to be something more of a pet project, and they sort of wrote it and they just had fun with it. And that's not a bad thing. This is actually a really well thought out story. So I went ahead and took a look at how many chapters that they've actually published, and I don't want to ruin the names and how many chapters there are, but when I was looking at the chapters, I'm like, well, if we have this much already in this volume and there's only this much left, maybe this is really only going to be like a 2-volume series. But when you read the afterword and you see some of the stuff that they published, the author is actually creating bonus content to sort of give us English readers sort of a definitive edition of this story. They're so motivated by their work being published into a formal light novel that they want to be able to create this bonus content, these bonus chapters, and flesh out the world just a little bit more. So if you were to ask me, I think this would be maybe a nice little trilogy. If not, maybe 4 volumes max if we're really lucky. So yeah, I had a little bit of an issue with the pacing at first, but then after I read the afterword and maybe I did a little bit of research, you didn't really need to do research, but when you read that afterword, you kind of get a much bigger appreciation of what the story is meant to be. So with everything said and done, we move on to my final verdict. So the final verdict that I have for this book is that it is a fun read. Now I know some people are going to have issues with the pacing of this book, and you also have to remember that this book is mainly focused on the alchemy aspect and how that alchemy that Tina uses supports her and her family and benefits therein. So if this sounds right up your alley, then I promise you're gonna have a whole lot of fun reading this sweet little story about Tina and Marcus. Personally, I'm very much looking forward to volume 2 to see where this story is gonna go, because I really want to see how Tina develops as she's getting older, because she's a young girl right now, like you could see in the cover, and her priority is her family, but I want to see if her priorities change when she gets older. She's still gonna want to hang out with her dad and develop this in, or is she gonna want to try to do her own thing, maybe set out on adventures, or maybe provide alchemy to these other countries, maybe set off on her own so that she can search for rare ingredients to improve her alchemy. I'm very much interested in seeing where the story is gonna go as she gets older. And that, fellow readers, is Reincarnated as the Last of My Kind. Let me know what you think about this title down below, and if you like this video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. We're going to be bringing more light novel reviews in the near future. With that being said, I will see you all next time. Bye everyone.